Hi, I'm Nathaniel, and today I realized something new. A few months ago, I read an article on the Civil blog that talked about the difficulties with trying to be a professional short fiction author today. Back in the golden age of pulp fiction, authors could survive in a tiny apartment using just their wits and a beat-up typewriter. The the pay then was only about a cent per hour, but if you adjust for inflation, it was actually more like 30 cents. Not to mention that the cost of living back then was far, far less. Econ- Economics aside, there were also more markets back then. Today I can count on the amount of well paying magazines open for submissions on one hand. Now, there are usually more than just five magazines that pay the professional rate of 8 cents per word total, but they usually only open once or twice a year for submissions. There are other magazines that pay less, or there's magazines that are just flash fiction magazines and sell fiction that are less than 1,000 words. But even at like 10 cents per word, that it isn't a lot, and so I'm not really counting the. And there's of course there's ones that are like drabbles or flash fiction with stories less than 1,000 words, but I usually don't count those for calculations because those aren't really. I won't say they're short stories, but they're different. Anyway, moving on. This is already a tangent. There are other magazines that pay less, but if you compare it even with minimum wage, you'd make a lot more money flipping burgers than selling a story. Of course, it isn't really the magazine's fault. The readership today is far less than ever before. TV and video games have eaten a lot of the market. And actually, hold on. The reason that some markets still only pay a cent per a word is that they don't have any more money than that. It's not a slight against them either. They try their best, but it's just what's happening. So with only so many markets open at a given time, and when they are open, the editors can only buy so many stories because they have a tight budget. I and a lot of other people came to the realization that if somebody was going to try to survive writing being a short fiction writer today, it would be really silly and they wouldn't make it. So with that background, I want to talk to you about something that Mr. Clark said in his editorial for the November issue of Clark's World. He mentions that he says down here that the reason why most short fiction magazines can even afford to pay pro rates for short stories is by not paying the editors. And all my thinking before about how things were so much better back then, I completely forgot about the editors. If you think authors have it bad, now editors. I completely forgot about the editors. If you think authors have it bad today, think about how someone whose job is to read. Think about editors who these days practically they read really bad stories for a hobby. And what about AI? Yeah, authors are really upset about how AI is clogging the market. And, but what about editors who have to read through all the stuff? I've read AI and it's not very fun to read. While I do think that the reason submission magazines windows are only about a month long is because the amount of wannabe writers have increased and because they can only buy so many stories in a month. they can only publish so many, and because they can only publish so many stories a month, and only so many stories a year, they have all their stories practically already there as soon as they open the submission window. Maybe it's also because that editors don't have the time. They have to work a different job. But now Clark's World is an exception to the rules because there's a line in this article also that says that he can compensate editors, which is great. But I think authors, when they submit a story to a magazine, and especially whether it's Clark World or other places, I do highly recommend other places, they should remember there's someone on the other side who has to read the story. And while some of us, we can't really do anything to help other than subscribe, which you should definitely subscribe to Clark's World. It is one of the my best fiction magazines I've seen. But there isn't, other than subscribing, there isn't anything else to do, and it isn't just us who have a tough time with the short fiction industry. Yeah, and it just I think a little bit of reflection on that, and just keep that in mind when you're going, because I've seen a lot of people complain how tough it is, but the editors really don't complain, I noticed. Anyway, and even with all the problems, Clark's World has managed to bounce back from a drop in subscribers. Amazon got rid of a way to do subscriptions, and they lost a ton of subscribers. But they managed to bounce back, and now they're going to be increasing the author pay from 12 cents to 14 cents, and even now they're one of the highest paying markets on the planet for science. They're the highest paying market on the planet for science fiction. And honestly, I kind of hope they get more subscribers and they can use some of the extra money to help pay the editors even more too. Thank you for watching this video. If you want something else to do after this, you don't have to like or subscribe. Just go check out the new issue of Clark's World. I haven't read it yet. I've been fairly busy, but I'm sure you'll find something nice to read. Goodbye.